Okay, the live stream is started.
All right, and I will start the webinar so everyone else can join it. All right, people are flowing in.
Flowing in. All right, Sammy, we're ready.
We're ready.
All right, welcome everyone to the March 2023 meeting of the Clifton Town Council, being held on Tuesday as our charter directs, as our stated regular meeting, first Tuesday of each month. We have a busy agenda, so we'll try and move quickly through it. So we'll start with the town clerk's report as usual.
The February 7th minutes were circulated and I did not receive any revisions.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as drafted.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Okay, what else?
I am currently checking with the committee chairs for all town committees in an attempt to start updating the committee roster.
Okay.
It's overdue anyway, but it's being prompted by the work that we're starting to get done on the town plan, which you'll hear more about during the report of the Planning Commission. But I wanted to bring to your attention that a lot of the chairs and people that I've contacted expressed surprise that there is a roster and that they are chair of a committee. And definitely we've had some of the listed committee members have moved out of town. So I wanted to find out if you all had any suggestions on if we should try to publicize the committees. Should we seek interested volunteers for any of them? And if so, what sort of audience would we be targeting? Is it just limited to people who live in the town, for example? Like I'm not talking about Planning Commission or ARB or anything like that, but something that's the town has put together, like the parking committee or that sort of thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Daryl.
I was just going to say, I believe like the chair, my understanding, and I may be remembering incorrectly, but I believe the chair needs to be a resident, but that other folks from outside town can sit on those committees. But I don't know if that's part of the code or if it's just tradition or.
I think that's right, because they're all somewhat ad hoc committees anyway. They're
Right.
not called out. They're not required by the charter like the others.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to the council who we want to put on there. Traditionally, we had gone through the committee list at the beginning of each session. Perhaps we did not do this this year. I don't recall. And certainly it's not a secret list. I don't think so. The committee list is certainly something that could be on the town website.
Yes,
I believe it is.
It's published, but I just don't think anyone really sees it unless we were to try to publicize it.
I think this just kind of tells us that most of the committees have been inactive / defunct.
Yep.
Likely as we come out of the pandemic, some of that will change depending on the committees themselves. But I appreciate the effort in getting that stuff updated.
Yeah, so I
For
think it's at some time, and it could be now, each of the committee chairs would be contacted to go, you're a committee chair, how's your committee going? And they could say, oh, I didn't know I was, I don't want to be, whatever. And then we could take that information back. As far as each committee's members, I would expect the chair, assuming there is one and they're active, to have a handle on their own committee and who's active and who's not. And if they think they need additional people or to let us know so-and-so is moved or whatever, that we would count on the chairs to have responsibility and not be sort of looking over their shoulder on all of it.
Yeah, I think especially after doing this work on the Title VI, in terms of increasing transparency on how to even become a member of the committee, I think it's a great time to be a little bit more vocal about the existence of the committees and just opening it up to the community for interest, especially if so many people are wanting to transition out. I think that's something, especially after moving to town, finding your way to see what's available is not always so straightforward. And I can say that I know there are people out there that want to get more involved, especially people who don't live within town limits, who would love to be a part of a committee. So I think that finding a channel to put that message out to our community that there are committees that need members, but that also would take some extra work to figure out, is this committee ready to be active? So it could be certainly a little bit bigger project.
Is the first step reviewing the committee list to see if we even need certain committees anymore? We just do a quick scan to see.
That sounds right.
Since forming a committee we don't need.
Some of the committees that are ad hoc are definitely defunct, and there've been requests for certain ones to be removed, like specifically the noise committee. Others. Mhm.
Go ahead, Steve.
I think Patrick is correct on this, as is Amanda. We have a bunch of ad hoc committees that were put in place over the years to deal with a specific issue. They dealt with the issue. The committee never got disbanded. It should be disbanded. One of the problems we've got is there are a limited number of people in town who are willing to participate on these committees. And as the committees proliferate, it's more and more difficult to get people on the committees. I would start, as Patrick suggested, taking a look at the list. I was on the noise committee. I was on the parking committee. We've dealt with that as much as we can deal with it. If there is a new issue that is raised, we can always start a new committee, but I think those committees should be disbanded officially. And we can start clean.
I think we should try to adopt that as a practice to disband the committees once their work is done going forward. But yeah, I agree with all that's been said.
I was part of a committee that wrote an informal complaint procedure. Well, that procedure was adopted by the town council, 5-7 years ago. I don't know whether the committee still exists. It shouldn't.
A complaint committee?
Yeah.
Okay, so at the next meeting, should we do a review of all committees and disband those we feel are inactive, or at least indicate that we feel they should be disbanded, subject to the agreement of the committee chair, or none? I don't even know. Or just disband them and go from there at the next meeting?
I think at the next meeting, we could disband the ones that don't need to exist. But since each committee has a council member on it, I think it would be more efficient for the council members to get with their committee, confirm that the chair is still interested in chairing, and confirm which members want to stay or leave. And then we can come back with vacancies to fill. Chasing the chairs that don't want to be a chair, I don't think is going to get us there very quickly.
I agree with that. And I think there are probably some other efficiencies that we could create with regard to these committees. There's a few different events, for example, that happen, and we have an events committee. I think those events could likely be managed under a single committee for events rather than having a separate committee for each event. Just as an example.
So is the proposal then that over the next 30 days, each council member will address the committees that they're responsible for and reach out to the chairs of those, and each council member will come back with a recommendation at the next meeting on each of these committees?
That sounds like a plan.
That's
Okay.
homework I can sign up for. Yeah.
Amanda, can you send the list out? Because I don't even know what that looks like.
Yes, I can send out the current roster, and I've already contacted the chairs of every committee, and so I will send out the information that I've received so far, just in case people don't have to repeat some of the communications that have already been done.
Okay, so next month we'll do the committee review. Okay,
That's all I have to report. Thank you.
all right, next is the treasurer's report. Treasurer's not with us. I did speak to the treasurer. I'll give you an update on a couple of these things. Number one, United Bank. Good news. We're moving into CDs at 4%. I talked to Nick, believe it or not, they're thinking about one $900,000 CD. We're thinking about $300,000 CDs. You might go, how come not $25,000 CDs? That's because instead of having money in breakable CDs, by the way, on the breakable CDs, if you break them, you pay them a penalty of 4% for the remaining period. So not only do you not get the money, you pay them 4%. So bad, you don't want to break them. But the manager, this is according to United Bank, the manager said, you know what, I will bump your super money market account up to 3.5%. That's a fully fungible account. So instead of the other 200 going into CDs, 200 extra will go into super money market, where it'll be in there at 3.5 and fully fungible. Okay. So that's good news. We weren't expecting that. Special treatment there. B polls coming along nicely. The audit is 3 years overdue, I guess, because of the pandemic. And the auditor has been just not returning calls. I guess they're busy. They're behind on many other jurisdictions. So what we're trying to do is figure out what their proposal is. If they want to do 3 years as a single thing to catch up, that's fine. But we just need to know what the plan is. You may or may not know that we're not obligated to do audits. Wayne Nickham implemented the practice of doing annual audits because he wanted everything to be completely above board and suspicion in the town, but it's really a discretionary thing that we do. Continuing to work on that. Treasurer's report was sent out for February 2023. Seemed reasonably straightforward. We could approve this treasurer's report if people would like, and Amanda could put it in the minutes. Anybody have thoughts on that? Or anything about it? Any concerns? Okay. I'll make a recommendation to approve the treasurer's report as presented for February 2023.
That's a motion.
It is a motion.
Second.
Yep. Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions. All right, so Amanda, you can put that in the minutes. You're probably wondering about the previous ones. We'll deal with that at another time, but at least I'd like to get this one out the door. By the way, it's looking good. Revenues are up and expenses are down. So the kind of thing you want to see in a report, which is like why we like to get them. Scheduling budget work sessions. Nick said he was going to send out some proposed dates. I don't know if he did. I didn't see any. Would be, when have we done those in the past? In April?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And should we put some dates on the calendar? I don't remember what they were last year. I mean, I could probably figure it out. Anybody know? In other words, were they Wednesdays or?
I'm looking in the calendar right now. I usually put them on the town hall calendar in case. So It looks like April, yeah, that's back in 2018. Hold on. April 19th, April 14th, April 7th.
April 19th, 14th, and 7th?
Last year. That's what we did last year. 7th,
7th,
14th, and 19th.
19th. Okay.
That's what I have on the calendar. I can't swear that that's when we actually met, but that's what I have on the calendar.
April.
I don't think the last one we met, I think it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, I think you got it done in 2 meetings.
Those are Thursdays.
Thursdays.
Daryl, how's the hall? If we do the hall, by the way, I'm not saying we're doing the hall, but
Yeah, let me just check. In the month of April, the first 3 Thursdays are open. Mondays are generally open. First, second, and last Wednesday are open.
April 13th is a loser for me. It's not a loser. I got another obligation.
Okay.
So is the 6th, and let's see if we can get the trifecta. No, the 20th is okay. So Thursday's not good for me. New exciting obligations.
Do we not love Mondays?
Mondays? Yeah, I mean, tell me why you don't like Mondays.
Well, I'm good with them. I'm asking, you know.
I'm gonna shoot the whole day down. All right.
They happen to be open, is all I'm saying. Evenings in
Monday's
April.
Monday's fine. Monday, 3/10/17.
Yeah.
All right, that's the bidding. Monday, 3/10/17. Thoughts?
The first week in April is typically a spring break week, so
All right.
people with kids might be traveling.
Fair.
At least perfect
Anyone
timing.
here planning to travel?
And what's the reason why we have to? I forget. There's some reason. I don't know why though. Why would we need to do 3?
I think
Versus-
we've always scheduled 3 with the intent to be done in 2 meetings, and sometimes we are.
Why do we need to do, like, if we went 10/17/24, would that
we don't-
work?
Sure.
Sure.
We have to have this done in time to publish it and vote on it and have it in place by June. Is that right?
That makes sense.
And how long does it have to be publicized before that?
Like 2 weeks. So that means it has to be, so what happens is, shoot, that must be the driver. Maybe it is the driver.
I think that's why we need it wrapped up in April, because like we gotta,
Because then we have a public hearing in May.
yeah, something like that. And then we gotta wait, and then we adopt it in the next meeting in
Then we
June.
vote on it in June, because if we
Yeah.
didn't do that, we'd vote on it in July, which would be bad because we would already be in the year and we wouldn't have a budget. So in order to do May, it's got to be done by the 18th, which means the 17th would work. The 17th works. Darn it. Okay. 17th.
All right,
okay.
so
So
between
Last year you did it in 2 meetings.
Yeah, right. So
Last
maybe
two,
there's
the last 2 cycles, we've done it in 2 meetings.
Yeah, just so we know, between the 1st and 17th of April, we've only got 2 dates that are booked at the town hall, the 4th and the 14th. Everything else is open.
4th and the
So
14th.
now,
But I heard 3 through 7 is the spring break,
right.
which Lynn, I think that's a you thing. No, I only say because I don't know that anybody else has. I don't know.
Our kid has spring break the first 2 weeks.
First 2 weeks, okay, but whatever. I mean, it is what it is, right? Because I think otherwise we would do the 10th, the 12th, and the 17th. If
No.
it's the 3rd through the
10th and
7th.
12th?
Yeah, Monday,
Well, I don't-
Wednesday, Monday.
If we have to be done before the 18th to be able to advertise by the 2nd. We have to get everything in between the 10th and the 17th.
For
If we-
for
if we
budgets,
can't-
you only have to advertise for 1 week.
1 week.
So as long as we advertise on the April 24th, we should be fine.
Okay, but that would mean.
So we could
sometime
do
between the
10 and
10th
17, and then a 20th as a hold in case we need another one, or something
Yes.
like that.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah, it's my recollection that at the first meeting, we identified all sorts of things for the treasurer to go back and do research on. So
Yeah.
having the first and the second meeting 2 days apart might not be enough time to get that work done.
Yeah, I think that's why, like Monday the 10th, and then Monday the 17th, we have our second and hopefully final meeting. If there's any additional work, we would push it to the 20th, which would be that following Thursday.
so that's a week apart.
Right. We okay with 10, 17, and then 20?
All right, make it so. 10,
Closer.
17, 20.
Do you want to do 7 o'clock
Uh,
or 7:30?
sure. A preference, anybody care? 7 o'clock?
It sounds good.
7 o'clock, keep it fresh.
Yeah, that's good.
And do you
Okay,
want to do virtual or in person?
I say we plan on virtual. That's my preference. Always.
okay. I keep hearing rumblings about in person. We may be the only jurisdiction in the Commonwealth that isn't meeting in person, but no one
Clifton's
has,
always been unique.
yes, and no one as yet has stood up and actually, filed some or said something. I know, Jerry said that he'd rather meet in person, but I have not seen a groundswell yet of people saying you must meet, in person. And I'm certainly not opposed to meeting in person, but I know it will cause some problems. For quorum, we wouldn't have a quorum tonight, so we wouldn't have a meeting at all. And that's a problem. So that could evolve with time, but for now we'll plan virtual. Just letting people know that's on the horizon.
Just one
Go ahead.
reminder, 10, 17, and 20 is the
410,
Escape
417, 420. I booked
Okay.
the all from 7 to
I just
9.
wanted to
but-
confirm on the 20. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
so we can get them all done by the 24th for advertising.
okay.
Amanda, can you put out a notice at some point?
Yes.
Okay, because it's the same as last year. Just different dates.
Okay.
All right, done. Okay, on to the next, which is citizens' remarks. We had a request from Clifton Presbyterian Church to talk about parking lot questions. It was Jay Palau, but I understand it may be Mitch Martin who's going to tell us what the questions are.
I have promoted Mitch to a panelist.
Okay,
So Mitch, you can turn on your camera and you can speak.
and you're on mute as well.
All right, good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Raise your hand if you can't. Otherwise, I'll just keep proceeding. We appreciate the opportunity. My name is Mitch Martin. I'm the new Buildings and Grounds Elder for Clifton Presbyterian Church, having taken over from Jay Palau. And we originally had some questions, which Amanda was very good at answering for us. But since we were already on the agenda, we figured we'd take this opportunity to introduce the new Buildings and Grounds Elder, me, and to let you know kind of some activities that we're getting ready to do related to the parking lot. Also, I'm long-term Clifton resident, having moved here in 1969. So Clifton has a very special place in my heart, having gone to Clifton Elementary and Clifton Presbyterian for many, many years. What we're starting to see with the parking lot use in the post-COVID days is the volume increasing in the parking lot. And we're finding now that we do need to take some action, some proactive action to help protect some of those spaces at times for members of the congregation. We're getting a lot of requests from people in the congregation. We've had choir members that have had to park down in the floodplain. We've had choir members that have gone home because they couldn't find a parking space. I'm on the board of Cloverleaf Equine Center, formerly Northern Virginia Therapeutic Riding Program. We had a volunteer event for them a couple of weeks ago. Parking lot was full, and I blame nobody but me because I didn't think to block the parking lot. They all parked down in the floodplain. They were very gracious. But we want to make sure that as you see our parking lot roped off more often than it has been, that we're not sending the wrong message to the community. We fully are so appreciative of the visitors that come to the town of Clifton, and we fully support it, and we're glad to share the parking lot. But we do need to take a couple of actions. We're going to go ahead and invest in sealing the parking lot and putting new stripes down. So we do want to kind of protect it as much as we can. I had also talked with Amanda as far as our next steps for getting a sign that references that it is church parking. Some of our parking attendants have been in discussions with people that want to park in the lot and during a church activity. And as we try and divert them to the floodplain, they get into arguments saying that, you know, it's not our parking lot. So we figure working with the Architecture Review Board, we can come up with a tasteful sign, a gracious sign that says this is church parking priority. And that's really the purpose of the comments tonight. I wanted you to know who I am. We want to certainly keep the relationship and the dialogue open with the town. If you have any concerns related to our buildings and grounds, you know, please reach out. The manse, we're getting ready to reopen the doors. We've restored the interior. We're not sure exactly what the use will be, but it's really nice inside. And so we're looking forward to sharing that either with a nonprofit, or we're looking that the preschool is further expanding. So we may move some of the church activities into the manse. So that's really all I have to say tonight. And I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Mitch, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is there a particular time that is more problematic?
That is a very good question. And that is something that I need to look into to narrow it down. And I need to probably get on some sort of mailing list for Trummers and for Villaggio in particular to find out what activities or what special events they may have going on. Because it does right now, and also in the post-COVID world, there doesn't seem to be a pattern. And I need to figure that out. I know when we did have the Cloverleaf event, it was a Saturday afternoon, beautiful Saturday afternoon, and the parking lot was full by, say, 1 o'clock. So I think it's a good question. I'm looking into it further. It may also be weather related as well. Nice days. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mitch, what actually is the church parking lot? There's a big slab of asphalt there, and I'm not sure what is what.
That is a good question too, and I have been asked that a lot. And now that I've had 3 bids on having it sealed, I know exactly where our property ends. So as you pull into Trummer's parking lot, at the back of their parking lot is the island, a planting island between the church parking lot. On one side, there is kind of a drain that marks the property line. On the other side, it's more of just a dip in the driveway that shows the division between Trummer's and our lot. Yeah, and so we had mentioned to Trummers that we're having this done, and I'm not sure what their next steps are, obviously.
So there's a road. I don't know whether that's a public road or how that's done, but there's a road abutting the railroad tracks.
Right. There is
And
Richards Lane.
And Richards Lane goes up to. Does it go all the way up to the house there?
It does. And I just met Sean the other day that moved into that house. So the church has an obligation to give him right of way into his property.
To get
Richards.
To get to the property, but he doesn't have rights to park on the church parking lot.
Right.
Okay, and then there's a church parking lot. Then you come down and maybe drawing a line out from where the demarcation is between Trummers and the Manse. There's a property line there, essentially.
There is. There's a
Okay.
fence that goes on the back side of Trummers, and basically if we follow that fence line straight across to the railroad track. That's
Okay.
pretty much where the property line is.
And is there some agreement in place between Trummers and the church?
We do. We have an agreement that was signed 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. It's outdated, but it's written into the agreement that it automatically renews each year. And having taken over now this position as Buildings and Grounds elders, that's one of the things on my list of many things to do, is to work with Trummers to put in place a new agreement, right?
And the current agreement, does it allow the church to use Trummers lot and Trummers to use the church lot, or how does it work?
It doesn't specifically state that. We've had a very good relationship with Trummers and with the previous restaurant owners. And so there's an unspoken agreement that Trummers, if our parking lot is available, they can park, their customers, their clientele can park in our parking lot. And to be quite honest, I mean, that is part of our concern too. And that is why we're going to go to this proactive method of blocking off our parking lot when we need to, because of visitors to Trummers and to Bellagio in particular. Yeah.
Okay. And what if that agreement does not allow them to use the parking lot expressly? What does it do generally?
I wish I brought the agreement with me. I think it basically just mentions that we will work together. The two organizations work together to to accommodate parking. Yeah. And so over the years we've had shared snow plowing and those types of things, and then certainly want to continue that good relationship as well.
Are there cases where your parking lot overflows with church guests and you need to utilize some of Trummers parking at certain times? Has that happened, or is it really just the restaurant overflowing into your lot?
It's really the restaurant overflowing into our lot. Before COVID, there were times such as Christmas and at Easter. Yes, we definitely overflowed into the other parking area. And we hope to get back to that, in this post-COVID world. But primarily right now, it's the restaurants parking in the church parking lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we're not complaining, so we just need to make it work for.
Yeah, just want to understand the lay. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that agreement was tied to somebody's construction project. Wasn't sure if it's when the church expanded or Trummers expanded.
It may go back that far. The addition was completed in 2006, and I wish I'd brought that agreement. And that may go back that far. I know when I asked about it, they said, "Oh, the agreement automatically renews each year." So it really hasn't been high on my list of priorities yet, but it will be.
Jay had his hand raised. I promoted him to panelist. So Jay, if you want to put your camera on and speak, that'd be great.
Hi, I don't have much. Mitch covered everything. When I raised my hand, I wasn't sure he had the answers, but he does. He's definitely knows what's going on. And you were correct. We have our parking lot, the demarcation, the back fence is a great way to think of it, going all the way to the tracks, except for, of course, Richards Lane is ours. It was once a public road. It was VDOT gave it to the church, abandoned it basically. So we're responsible also for that entrance by the railroad tracks all the way to the home, just like Mitch said. So I guess I don't have a whole lot else to add. I guess I'll just second his thoughts. He's like he said, he's taken over for me, and he's doing, of course, a better job than I was. So he's a good guy.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. One other thing, Mitch, to the extent that there's any intent to use the Manse, you'll have to think about, particularly if some third party group comes in.
Okay.
Use permit, that'll go right into parking and have to go through the planning commission. So if there's a plan to use, then you got to look at use, and use goes to the planning commission. So that's something you want to get ahead of in
Good.
plan.
Yeah.
And that would include expanding the preschool because the preschool has its own use permit.
Yep.
You should email me about that if you have any questions.
Yeah, well, you and I should talk because the enrollment has gone up significantly for the next school year. Obviously, we don't know if the following school year will be as high of an enrollment. But yeah, Amanda, I'll give you a call tomorrow, or we can email, and I do need to find out more information about that. And thank you also as far as the requirements for the MANTS. That had not crossed my mind, and I'm glad to now be aware of it. Thank you.
Good, better to know early.
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
and-
thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
All right. There's an item on here about the CBA's proposal to resurface the basketball court. Wondering if we should go ahead and get that out of the way. If Steve Bittner is out there. Phyllis, can you tell?
Yes,
He's-
Steve is. I was just moving on Mitch first. I'll promote. Say, Steve, you're getting ready to be moved.
All right, let's
Steve, you are now promoted to panelist, so you can turn on
Go
your
ahead
camera
and-
and speak.
go ahead and do that. It's 6A here, but I'd like to go ahead and get this out of the way.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Why can't you see me? My camera is on.
Got a lens cap?
No. It says it's on. Oh,
There we go.
I did. Awesome. Well, I was prepared to go in probably 2 to 3 hours from now. So
Right.
thank you for taking me.
But
Let me get my document up here. So, okay. Let me move. Give me a second because I had to move into another room.
And Steve sent out 2 proposals that
I did, yeah.
that they had. So if everybody's got those and aware, it talks about the scope.
Okay, I'm ready to go. Bill, thanks for filling for me.
Okay. rock and
Okay,
roll.
so yeah, I guess I need to introduce myself. My name is Steve Bittner. I live with my wife Kim at 12746 Chapel Street, directly across from the street from the Clifton Town Park. So I'm sure most of you know where I live. So first of all, I'd like to thank the mayor and the town council for their investment of time and support of our great town. I'll tell you, the amount of time you put in to keep things smoothly running is really appreciated by the town folks. So I just wanted to say that. So the reason I'm here today as a representative of the CBA would like to fund the resurfacing of the Clifton Town Park basketball court and are really just looking to gain approval from the town council. Okay. The basketball court was expanded and resurfaced in the spring of 2013. I believe it's been 10 years since we resurfaced it. The previous expansion, before the previous expansion, was just an asphalt court, and we expanded it by 6 feet on one side, 2 feet on another side, and then we put down what's called lake hold. That's that tennis court material that you see. Primer and paint was applied along with lines for the basketball court. So 10 years ago that was done. And to be honest, it was put on top of asphalt. So there's an enormous amount of asphalt there, and there are no cracks in it after 10 years. We had a couple of proposals, people come out from 2 organizations that resurface, and they were both quite surprised that there were really no cracks in the court. It just blemishes here and there from basically use over 10 years. So we got 2 proposals, one from a company called Resurface Incorporated from Gainesville, and another from Mid-Atlantic Tennis Courts from McLean. So they're both local companies. So as part of the resurfacing, we would like to install additional lines for pickleball, of course, because of how that's taking over the world. And we would also like to put a small image of a hummingbird on a spot that Jamie Netchert used to shoot from when he played for 30 years on that basketball court. So I don't know if y'all are aware of the plaque that's on the basketball goal, right on the main goal there. There's a plaque in memory of Jamie. We would like to put a little image of a hummingbird there also. And so we'd like to resurface it and reline it for the basketball, and then also line it for pickleball. The lines will be a little bit different color, so you don't confuse them as much. So that's the work. The resurfacing will consist of a power washing of the court, a small amount of repair because there really isn't a whole lot wrong with it. A base coat, a kind of a primer coat, and then 2 coats of additional finishing of paint, and then the lining of the basketball, the pickleball, and of course the small hummingbird. In addition to the resurface, the CBA would like to gather some volunteers to apply dirt and sod around the edge of the court. When we resurfaced it 10 years ago, we kind of smoothed the edge of the court down to grade so that there wouldn't be danger in kind of rolling your ankles or falling off the court. Over the last 10 years, the ground level, the dirt and the grass have kind of sunk in a little bit. And on one side, close to the playground, there's a bit of a drop there. So we're looking to get some volunteers to kind of move some fill dirt around and place some sod. And Donna Netcher is working with Evan Lawrence from the local Boy Scout troop, who has agreed to provide support from a labor perspective for the installation of the dirt and sod. And I'll be there. It'll be under my direction. Okay. And then the final thing, we're looking to get permission to purchase and install a small bin, a lockable bin, sturdy lockable bin with a lock that can hold the portable net for pickleball, spare rackets and balls. The bin will be placed in a spot to be determined by the park committee and the CBA. Okay. One other thing, depending upon the weather and the temperature, the court will be shut down anywhere from maybe a couple to 5 days, 2 to 5 days, depending upon the weather, you know, how warm it is and so forth, to give the, obviously the resurfacing time to dry and so forth. Okay. I guess I don't really have to show anything. I wanted to tell you about the pricing, although the CBA will be paying for the resurfacing and all the other work that needs to be done. The 2 proposals we got, I had to normalize them because Resurface Incorporated wanted to apply 2 base coats of primer. I liked the Mid-Atlantic guy better. They were both good. I was impressed with both of them. He felt that 1 primer coat based on the condition of the current court was plenty. So after normalizing them, the Mid-Atlantic proposal is $7,060. The Resurface Incorporated was about $1,260 more than that for like application. So I liked the Mid-Atlantic better anyway. So we are going to go with the $7,000 proposal from Mid-Atlantic Tennis Courts. Okay. The timing of this really depends upon the weather. We're hopeful that we can get this done in April based on the weather. Because there are no cracks in the court, they can do the work earlier. We don't need the warm weather as much when you're just resurfacing. So I'm hopeful that we can get this scheduled sometime in April, at which point we'll have to obviously block off the basketball court and really monitor it to make sure that people do not get on it before it's ready. So why don't I stop there for a second and see if there are any questions?
Yeah, Steve, just to clarify, you're just asking the council to approve this because this is land that is owned by the town, right? I mean,
That's
we don't have to
exactly
do
right.
anything else. It's just saying we give you the blessing to do what you're asking to do.
That's exactly. We're not looking for funds from the town. We're looking to basically pay
But it's
for
not
it.
a zoning issue. It's not a planning commission issue. It's just asking the town council that you can do this on town property.
Yeah, we're not expanding the size of the court. It's purely a resurfacing of the existing court.
You're muted.
Can I make a motion to approve?
The only concern I have is the bin and making sure this bin is not hideous. But something that Jerry Antis and Royce and BB Peterson and others will not go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you put that in the park.
I feel like it would need to have ARB approval. It's a structure.
I wonder, it's interesting that something like sheds less than 10 by 10 feet don't get ARB approval. This isn't really a shed. It's not
a shed. Yeah, we're talking about maybe 3 feet.
Because it just kind of sits there. On the other hand, it is a permanent thing. That's a structure. Personally, I would like the ARB to, it's going on our property.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get a bunch of feedback that this thing is awful. To the extent that the ARB looks at it and says, I like it, then we
Yeah.
have cover. So I'd like whatever that is to be approved by, the design of it to be approved by the ARB.
Have you identified the bins, Stephen? You put a
Yeah,
picture of it up?
we've had discussions about the bin. I looked at bins that were very, very sturdy, and I think we should get a sturdy one. You know, the type that you would typically see at a recreation park. So, you know, they're not the most attractive things in the world. They're boxes, but this one would be a metal box, quite heavy, that we would, you know, put outside of the court somewhere. So yeah, why don't we give a few proposals to the ARB and we can select which one we want to install.
Steve, I assume, first of all, that this is a box that is low, not a tall thing.
Yeah, so probably the max height is going to be maybe 3 feet.
Yeah.
And yeah.
The second assumption is, and maybe this is wrong, that it would be positioned between the court and the playground. It wouldn't be positioned toward the street.
I would suggest not towards the street. You know, to be honest, we haven't decided. I think we need to get the park committee out there to really decide where it should go so that it's not an impediment for people to get hurt on. You know, if you're playing basketball and you go running off the court, you don't want to run into this metal box. So we'll have to think through that. But yeah, so I think it makes sense that we identify the position, the type of box, give a few options, and then take that both to the park committee, who can consider it for safety, and also the ARB.
And that doesn't interfere at all with the timing on the surfacing or anything.
Now, all the equipment's in my barn right now, so it can stay there until we have this done.
And council members, are you okay delegating, if you will, to the ARB on this location question, as opposed to it coming back to us?
Yeah, as far as look and placement, I am.
Okay. And
That ARB, Parks Committee, yeah, all the stakeholders weighing in.
Is there a setback issue?
there sure in the heck can be.
There
So,
could be, yeah.
Yeah, we have to be, I'm sure, careful with, you know, certainly
The property lines, yeah.
yeah, the
Well,
key property line and so forth.
I don't think with the size there's a setback issue.
Yeah.
No, that's not the case. That 10 by 10 thing, that the issue is on design, not location. Example, Karen Harrington's shed. Remember that was up against the fence? Can't put it in the setback. So
But the ARB will cover that, right?
no, they will not. So our assumption, you can talk to Amanda and Kathy Kalinowski about it. Our assumption is this is not going in the setback. If it does, then that's not okay.
Yeah, I would think not. But
And so typically people would go to the planning commission, go, here's where we're putting it, and they go, no issues. Okay. But you'd at least run that trap to make sure it's okay.
Okay, so planning commission for the location, ARB for the selection, and then also positioning with the park committee.
Yeah, correct. So ARB for design and placement, planning commission to make sure it isn't in the wrong place.
Okay.
I mean, it gets down to essentially saying, if you have a lot, you draw 10 feet from the side and go, no, and generally 20 feet from the road, or it's complicated.
Behind whatever, if there's a pre-existing structure, you have to be behind that. Yeah.
Exactly. No. And that's not a lot. Okay. But it means the thing won't be right up against the street or right up against Vernon Jenny's, either of which we would get flack for. And you wouldn't be enthusiastic about either. But let's make sure that if anybody goes, because someone will look at it and go, oh my gosh, what is that? We'll say we did all the approvals and it was reviewed by everybody and all that.
Paint it green and put like an electrical sticker on it and just say it belongs to Novak or Cox or something.
Good idea.
Maybe we need a hummingbird on that too.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the request of the CBA to resurface and make improvements to the basketball court in Harris Park, including the location of a small lockable storage bin with the conditions that the CBA will fund the work, and the small lockable storage bin design and placement will be reviewed and approved by the ARB, and the location will be confirmed not to be within the setbacks by the planning.
Yeah, second that.
All right, motion a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? All right. Look forward to seeing it.
Thanks for doing this, Stephen. I know it's a lot of effort to go through all of it, but we appreciate it, and we appreciate the CBA putting up the funds to do it.
We can't wait. There's a lot of pent up pickleball desire in this town, so we gotta satiate it somehow.
Okay. One other thing I'd like to run through is there was a request by the History Committee to provide an update on the Harris Park signage and ceremony. I understand that Donna Netchard had requested to say some words about that. Is Donna out there, Phyllis? No. Okay, no worries.
Motion to table?
Well, I'll give the update.
Oh, okay.
I'm on the History Committee.
Withdraw my motion.
Yeah, no worries. So the language on the sign was approved by the council a long time ago. And interestingly, someone sent the language to somebody else who said it was outrageous and terrible and horrible and whatever. So Margot sent the language to a professor of African American history at Harvard University saying, could you look at our sign thing? And for whatever reason, the guy did. And he came back and said, this is great. I really like what you've done here. I have one proposed change: remove the quote marks from one word that's in the sign. Otherwise, I think it's terrific. By the way, words like African American and Black, people go both ways. Some people say this, some people say that. I myself, Harvard professor guy, use African American, but they're both okay. And I really am really pleased to see that your community has undertaken this effort. Okay, so first of all, that says that the wording on the signage looks good to people who like this is what they do. Okay. Second, I will point out that you can make any sign anywhere, anytime, saying anything, and somebody's going to say it's terrible, and other people are going to say it's great. That's just how it is, particularly with something like this. But the idea is to do something very good for our history and awareness of people. And as I've also reminded Margot, who gets very excited about all this, if for some reason in 5 years the world outlaws the use of this word or that word, we can just revise the sign. So, we're not going to stop and do nothing as a result of that. Okay, so wording is done. Amazing. Signs like this are becoming more prevalent around the county and other places. And we have found someone who both designs these signs, takes your graphics and all that, puts them together into something that looks snappy, and has the thingy that you stick it in. So we've found people who do this. The pricing is surprisingly reasonable. So the things you would think would be holdups, and frankly, they are holdups. Like you have a concept, how do you go from concept to reality with these practical issues? We now have answers to all of that. So we're quickly rolling downhill to have all this stuff done. It always takes time. However, there is a clear plan to get from here to there. And then at some point we'll have this sign, then there will be a ceremony, and we'll go from there. So that's the update. The things are moving along. Obviously, COVID didn't help, but now we're moving ahead. Okay.
What I have a question, Bill.
Yep. go.
Do you think we will be able to unveil the sign on or before Juneteenth of this year?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Just because of the reality of getting it designed and having everybody bless it and then finding the people. Could it happen? It could happen. But if
Have
you're asking me if I was putting my money down with our volunteer army to get everything done and, get everything built and in place, I don't think so.
is there
And
additional spending that we need to approve on this before
No,
it can be done?
I don't
Okay,
think
so
so.
the council has done everything the council needs to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a matter of getting her done. And the thinking was perhaps even in the fall might be a better time to have a ceremony. So if it's
Okay.
done by then, that would be great. But this will be there a long time and we want to make sure it's done right.
Sure.
So we've got momentum. In fact, we're meeting Thursday night again to go through the stuff. So move along, and hey, we might meet Juneteenth. If we do, that would be awesome, but we shall see.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you.
I appreciate the question. That takes us back. I want to knock some of these things out that had other folks besides us involved, which we will get to the next one of those in a moment. But let's run through Planning Commission, Zoning Administrator, ARB. I understand there's no report, if I'm right on that, but Planning Commission, Zoning Administrator. So Planning Commission. And was Paula Sampson going to do that? Or-
Yeah, Paula has been promoted to panelist. Paula, you can turn on your camera and unmute. We're ready.
All right, oh, there we go. All right. All right, good evening, and thank you. I'm here I'm Paula Sampson, and I'm on the Planning Commission, and the chair, Kathy Kalinowski, asked me if I would update the council on our progress on updating the town plan. And so we have been making some progress, and I don't think this will take very long. But just to let you know that we are underway. There are 2 phases to updating this. The first is to do an assessment of what needs to be done, what will make us in compliance with state law, what types of data and statistics need to be updated. And that phase is complete. Sam Kisner is our consultant, and of course she's, grew up in the town. She knows the town. We're lucky to have her because she understands our tradition, our history, our character. And so she has completed the first phase, and now the second phase is really the work has to get done. It's probably about a 10 to 12 month process. We will involve the committees, and we heard from Amanda that we're trying to figure out how we get in contact with the committees so we have their input. We will be engaging the public, and of course we'll be bringing the finished product for your approval, bringing that back to you, to the council. There's some basic issues that we really need to do to as we update this. The last time was 2009, and you're supposed to do it every 5 years, so we're a little behind the curve. But we have to make sure that we're in compliance with state law. State law does change, and what's required for a comprehensive plan does change, and so we do need to bring that into compliance. We're going to be working with the Northern Virginia Regional Commission and the county on getting maps, statistics, and other important data, bringing that all up to date. There's a lot of areas of the plan, that it will touch. And so these are things like traffic and parking and environment, land use, public buildings, parks, public spaces. And so that will be all coming to you, over the course. We'll be working with the committees and coming to you hopefully in about 10 to 12 months with an update. Also, on the subject of the update related to the parks and to the public space, I was talking to Kathy, and part of the plan is to look at all of our parks and our spaces, and we just added Air Square, and so there is an opportunity to improve that as a public space, and that's something that the Planning Commission will be looking at and is in Sam's outline. And we noticed that on your agenda tonight, you're talking about an update on replacing the tree that's there. And our thought was that if you would consider delaying any change like that to Air Square until we're a little further along in the planning process and can incorporate, a new tree in a way that, enhances the entire public space. So that is my report. I'll try to answer any questions if you have them. And that's it. No.
Any questions, council members? Okay.
I do have a question. I understand that this hasn't happened since 2009, and I was not a resident back in 2009, so I'm not sure how this plan is used in terms of kind of setting a vision for the direction that the town wants to go in, and like identifying priorities in terms of projects or anything else for that matter. I know from a project that I got deep into in the last month or so, that the importance of having that public input into future projects, is certainly in line with the Title VI work that I've been doing. But I'm just curious of how we're able to use this plan to really move us forward to some sort of a shared vision.
If I can respond, it's very interesting, great question. That is something that Kathy talked about at the Planning Commission meeting. When we first began the discussion, she said, why are we doing this? And she talked about the importance of thinking of our comp plan as kind of a foundation. And it's a foundational legal foundation for things like zoning and other things like that, but also the sense of vision of, what we want our town to look like, having some actual public discourse about that. So I think we can use it as much for that purpose and kind of inspiring and guiding, other projects that we might want to undertake if we would like to do it, if we'd like to use it for that purpose.
Yeah, thank you.
I just have to say, as I've reflected on this, and Steve may have his own views, that the comprehensive plan has information that's sort of obvious, and I thought about why is that different? If you were doing a comprehensive plan in Gainesville, okay, there would be a real question about where's this community heading and what's it going to look like. It's going to be all data centers, going to be some data centers and some people, or shopping, high end, low end, whatever. There's not a lot of development that's going to happen in Clifton. Ironically, there was a boom around 2000 when we changed the zoning, but otherwise not much is going to happen. So there's a vision, but the vision for the town is kind of why people move here, because it's a national historic district where we work really hard to preserve the town as it is, but keep it alive and real and energetic, and not just a show place where everything's static and a bunch of mannequins are here. But I think our band of which we'd look at future changes is just different than it is for other places. So I think the comprehensive planning process is probably a really big deal in a place where it's an open canvas and people are trying to figure it out. They're arguing, should we go all high rises or just low, or, you know, what should we do? Here, I think that may be why when you go through the comprehensive plan, and I've been through several of these changes, I've done some of them myself. When I was running the planning commission, not that much changes in them. It's a good idea to visit it. And I would certainly caution that if there was a vision coming out of it that said we should have dramatic changes, move to modern building design, maybe move to high rises, to have high density housing, that we might want to think really hard about it. It's kind of like, let's keep doing what we've been doing with incremental improvements, air square, things like that. Love it. Excellent idea. But I think that's why this planning commission process is something we're required to do by state law. It's not a bad idea, but the incremental change, I think, is probably fairly small because of the unique characteristics of our community. It explains why it's perhaps not the same as it might be in other places. I know we have a year now to go through this process, but I just want to give, as I've thought about this document, I thought, why is it different here than it is in other places? Just want to give that reflection from somebody who's been working on these things for, 20 odd years here in town.
I think, as we all are aware, small changes, even in a place like Clifton, feel like big changes. So if we compare our plan to that of a large area, they're very different, but that doesn't take away from the importance of the exercise and the relevance of any changes that are being proposed. Even small changes are going to feel big to folks that live here.
And that good, excellent point. And that means that, and this goes along with what all of you are saying, that any changes that are proposed, any change in directionality that would be proposed by the group to include in this plan, we should be floating out for 2-3 public meetings where we go through, because people go, oh, I didn't know about that. Okay, and if I say, look, we had 3 meetings on this, if you didn't know, that's a you issue, not a me issue. You should have come. But we'll talk about it over and over and over again to get input, and also to make sure nobody says they're surprised if we start making changes. As Daryl says, even small changes are big. Look at what we heard about Clifton Presbyterian Church. Their parking, they're right. They certainly have the ability to do that. But you can imagine when that happens, there's going to be all this surprise and shock.
Yeah, and just look at tonight's meeting. We have the church parking lot. We're all game planning how we'll field those complaints. Same thing with the equipment
Basketball
locker at the basketball court, or even just the pickleball stripes for the the people that play basketball are probably so even those small changes, we can anticipate feedback, and you can please some people some of the time. You can't please all the people all the time, but I really appreciate how this body is upfront and transparent about these kinds of changes, and I hope that that's consistent with the Planning Commission's work on this project.
I think there's a distinction that needs to be drawn, and it's not a big one. What the mayor has just said is almost obvious when you recognize that Clifton is constrained by things that we have no control over. We have absolutely no control over the sewer system, which constrains any more construction in the town. It also constrains what anybody can do with regard to numbers of people who come into the town. We have constraints with regard to parking. In particular, we don't control any of our roads. They're all controlled by VDOT. So the normal or the usual exercise of dealing with a comprehensive plan, many of those major issues are not on our table. We don't have any options there. So I think Daryl is correct. The small ones, are all things that are issues that the town council deals with all the time. But frankly, those aren't part of a comprehensive plan. I mean, the size of the box,
Sure.
for pickleball is not something that gets included in the comprehensive plan. So I think the comprehensive plan is important to relook at, but don't expect major changes in the comprehensive plan because we don't have the authority to do it. And not authority, but we are constrained in the ability.
The ability. Okay.
And just to respond, I think the planning commission, they really share that same sense that the vision is preservation of what we have. We're very happy and proud of what we have. And that came out a lot in the discussion so far.
Good. Okay. That was a very good discussion. Very helpful. And thank you, Paula. Very, very helpful. And we'll be looking forward to public meetings on this. By the way, is there a planning commission report, or there wasn't a meeting to do, or there's nothing to report besides that?
Amanda, I think that was just our one topic at the last.
Okay.
We also spent some time taking a look at Chapter 9, which is the town zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission is embarking on a project to reorganize the sections of Chapter 9 and is evaluating the possibility of recommending that the town council adopt civil penalties. So that's a project that's going to take some time to work on. It's in process now. It would definitely take less time and energy than the town plan.
Okay. The fines thing is a great idea. We've been talking about that for a long time. The reorganization, I would just throw a word of caution. I've seen this done many times on similar documents, and it creates massive confusion and long reviews because there are all these unintended consequences when you start moving stuff around. So be cautious on that and expect a long time to review and for people to get comfortable. No doubt there's some stuff in there that's awkward, no doubt about that, but people have learned to live with it. I know Kathy knows this, and I know the planning commission knows this, but from my own personal experience, I've lived through it, and it's like housekeeping, and it's really well intended, and then oh my gosh, this move, that move, and whatever.
How long did it take us to pass a new sign ordinance?
Yeah,
like 4 years or something.
Yeah. So this fine thing, that's focused. That's a winner. So my vote on what you put time into, but leave it to the planning commission. That's why you guys are there. Okay, excellent. Zoning administrator, anything?
Yep, just a quick report. First, on 7184 Clifton Road, I have heard from the owner, who is the redeveloper, and I've also heard from the county that the project is moving ahead pretty nicely. I don't know which of you have driven by recently and seen the big mound of dirt up there at the top of the hill. But they expect that the project will be done in a matter of weeks, and inspections will take place in a matter of weeks as well. So we've given Mr. Snyder guidance on what the next steps are to come back to the planning commission, provide documentation that is needed in order to obtain a final use permit. And once the town signs off, then he should be able to obtain his residential use permit from the county.
Excellent.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Other, yes.
Just one more update. You remember last month's meeting, we talked about Sun Design, and we got to meet one of the co-owners, Bob Gallagher. And not long after that council meeting, Kathy and I had a Zoom meeting with Mr. Gallagher, where we talked in much more detail about some of the issues that were raised at the last council meeting. We provided him with guidance on what we think needs to be done in order for the business to come into compliance with respect to the zoning ordinance. And it definitely included providing him with a detailed list of questions that we want answered as a part of the application process. And Sun Design is working on that application for a new use permit now, with the understanding that it needs to be submitted on or before the 15th of this month, so that the Planning Commission can review it at the end of the month. So good progress has been made on that as well.
Great. All right, I'm going to jump to a couple quick things. One is the annual town cleanup event is going to be on March 25th, which I am informed is a Saturday, right? And what time is the thing, Phyllis? In the morning or something? So, and anyone who participates in that, can let me know.
Nope,
when
I'm
it
leaving.
was. Yeah. It's like 10 to 12 or something.
It's
like
no, it's 8 to 10. I had to
8
go
to
look at the
10,
calendar.
whatever.
I have a hard copy
Okay.
calendar.
Okay. 8 to 10. I'm all over it. I'm all over it. 8 to 10. That'll be tough. Anyway, this is a great event, and it's being held on a Saturday. It's normally held on Sunday between 8 and 10, which for many people, you know, they have other obligations on Sunday mornings. But now it's being held on Saturday, which some people have Saturday obligations too, but there you are. So Saturday, March 25th, 8 to 10 a.m. Clifton Town Cleanup Event. Reagan and Laura are running that event, so please show up and help out, and they'll give you whatever directions and stuff. And everyone always says
That's the Committee on the Environment, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And I apologize. There's no Bluebird report this month. That may be next month. I know a lot of you have been eagerly awaiting that. It'll be next month. I saw a Bluebird the other day. They're beautiful. I'm a big fan. Board of Zoning Appeals, Jeff Stein's term expired, and they'd like us to recommend a new 5-year term expiring March 4th, 2028. I assume that's non-controversial. Now, recommend, okay, because Steve, I think the court actually does it, but they look for us to recommend someone.
We recommend it goes to the court goes through its paperwork, and then it comes back.
Yeah, okay. So I'll make a motion for the town council to recommend Jeff Stein for a new 5-year term on the Clifton Board of Zoning Appeals that would expire March 4th, 2028.
Second.
Yeah, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I
All
just
in
have
favor?
a, I just have a question. Did he request to have an extension?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
he
that
confirmed
wasn't
that
clear.
he's willing.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're not just saying that.
Voluntelling him.
Yeah, this is, what's happened is these people want this to be done, but they need us to take action. Okay. The next two things are like that. Okay, so all in favor of recommending Jeff Stein, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Similar, we have an industrial development authority, and we've been asked to reappoint Brant Baber to a new 4-year term, which would expire March 4th, 2027. Okay. Brant, motion and a second. Brant's been leading that effort for some time. And at one time it was extremely busy, and that could happen again at any time. You never know. So it's good to have in place. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, Amanda, you'll let the appropriate people know about
Yes.
this? Okay, thank you very much. Daryl, do you have anything to say about the tree? The The planning people said, hold off on the tree. The tree is there. I will add that one of our youngest child, unprompted, drove by the tree and said, please don't take our beautiful tree. I love our tree. Think hard about the tree. And then today we had the think hard about the tree. It's not doing anything bad.
I think we are thinking hard about the tree. That's why this is on the agenda in March, February and March. But Mark Olson, the guy that was recommended to us by a member of the community, was out on Sunday to just, take a look. He had a couple questions for me, which I answered on Sunday, and I had hoped to have a proposal from him to get out to you ahead of this meeting, but it hasn't arrived yet. I'm not actively chasing him down for this stuff, but if he wants the work, he'll submit a proposal and we'll consider it. I understand there's, the Parks Committee also would like to weigh in and probably have another proposal to consider. And it sounds like now the comprehensive plan may include some, direction or guidance for any changes to Air Square. So yeah, I think no material updates, but noted that, this will be a thoughtful process on any changes we make to Air Square.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm glad we're putting in a lot of effort on this tree. And we'll continue to think about it and look forward to getting Mark Olson's update, as you say. I mean, if he's desirous of providing input, he will.
Yep.
Renewal of the town grass mowing contract. This was a Reagan thing. He said
no change, right?
Yeah, it's the same as last year, $165. So I will make a motion to approve renewal of the town grass mowing contract with the same company and the same terms as last year.
Second.
The motion in a second. Let's do
it's 165 a month, right?
It's got to be 165 a mowing, and the mowings, like in December, they're less frequent, and in May they're more frequent. So I think that's what it is, which seems like a good value.
Yep.
Okay. So, and I think the idea is to get that set up before the mowing season starts, which is happening in earnest. So we got a motion, a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Holloway, aye.
F. Ross, aye.
Poe, aye.
Line aye.
Screen aye.
All right. So that takes us back to the Streetscape Committee, which is Jerry and Susan, who I understand might be giving us an update.
Hey, hang up. We got to wake up here real quick, but sorry. We thought we were going a lot earlier in the meeting, so we're just trying to catch up, but all good. So update in terms of the proposal from our civil engineer consultant. We are still under review on that. We will have two different advisors, consultants, whatever you want to call them, helping us to look through that since it is so comprehensive. The $3,300 that the council approved last meeting for the scoping of the drainage pipe, we've set into motion for that work to be done. VDOT is scheduling that. We don't have a schedule yet. We're waiting on that feedback. Susan and I did bring up to VDOT our thoughts on that. We felt this work in terms of rescoping the pipe, redesigning the drainage that was previously approved by VDOT, that it seemed we are doing work twice and then the project is going to have to pay for it twice. So that is being looked into by VDOT, most likely to be a part of, if there's the best ability they have to potentially contribute to that cost for that work would be during the construction phase. So they've agreed to look into that. And if there's that opportunity, that maybe that we can, work through some, because it's not just having to do the redesign, but there's also potentially requirements that VDOT may have that would basically put in place a more costly construction solution, just because of where our pipes are currently located, which is they're very shallow, so they're very close to the surface of the roadway. In our meeting today with VDOT, it was discussed whether we should have a public hearing. We've obviously had a public hearing a number of years ago for the streetscape. And following that, obviously, we got approval from town council. But given the inclusion of the relocation of the utilities, it was thought that maybe that should be brought to the public as well. And so instead of doing a public hearing, what we decided on, we could do a request for a willingness to hold a public hearing, which is basically a step below a public hearing, which is fewer requirements, less time in terms of notice and so forth. So I'm not sure we're set to put that into motion today, but just letting you know.
What is that? Like, if let's say we had a public hearing, it would typically be a public hearing on some action that was being proposed. What's the action?
It's basically the inclusion of the relocation of utilities to the streetscape project.
Oh, okay. And what is this other thing? A request for?
It's basically in lieu of a public hearing. There's what's called a request for a willingness to hold a public hearing. So, like I said, there's less requirements for it. There's less time in terms of notice. Basically, it's 30 days versus 60 days. So it's basically just a simpler step. And then if we do that, there is a mechanism that someone could then request that a public hearing be to be held. But obviously the intent of this other would be to provide just enough information, given that, the relocation of the utilities is a good thing. And it's not really very impactful to anything. You're taking things away from the visual streetscape. So, but we can, we'll get that outlined, and then as we are ready to move forward, we'll let you know.
All right.
That's it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Very helpful. Sorry to keep you waiting. It's always jockeying the many people to try to move them along, but we see you as part of our family, so we treat you the same as we treat ourselves.
Great to know.
Feel better about that.
Yes. Okay. And speaking of family and treatment, that brings us to the last item, the Clifton Title VI plan, which I'll turn over to Lynn to talk about, which this works perfectly because it ties into and coming after streetscape, because this whole thing is driven by the town taking funds from the U.S. Department of Transportation through the Virginia Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway something or other, Federal Aid Highway Program. If we take this money, which we're planning to do, then it requires us to implement this Title VI civil rights plan with regard to work that somehow touches on our taking this federal highway money. So a good segue from Jerry into Lynn talking about this. And well, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 presumably has been around for a little while. VDOT decided this year they were really going to go after towns across the state to have plans for this, because apparently nobody did. And so they're busily asking people to do this, including us. As you know, as a result, there's no clear template to do it, and we're kind of creating it. I imagine in 6 months or a year there will be, but right now there aren't. So here we go. So Lynn?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So yes, as a part of VDOT really cracking down on Title VI compliance, they issued a list of 4 different discrepancies that we needed to respond to. The first one being the Title VI plan. The second one involving, how we are applying the plan for our public involvement for a variety of different activities that we're involved in. 3, contracting, and for our complaint procedure for Title VI. So tonight, these discrepancies need to be responded to by March 10th. And so tonight I want to just take you through the process of what's been done and just make sure that everyone is on board and approves submitting what we have so far over to VDOT to be able to review these materials. They might come back and find different, they might find that we need to elaborate, expand on some of the items that we submit. But once we get to a point where everything's finalized, then we'll be able to advertise all of this publicly.
Now, Lynn, one thing I'll add at the beginning, there were 4 things, and my recollection was 3 of them were reasonably straightforward. And the 4th was having a plan. And you have spent, and I thank you for it, a lot of time putting a plan together. I went through the plan, and at least there's one part of it, and I can see why it is the way it is, but there's a statement at the beginning that says the town will agree to do certain things, and then there's a plan behind it. And the statement at the front says, we agree that we will apply the federal highway DOT civil rights to every project and everything that this town does without regard to whether it relates to federal highway funding. And I can't sign that. So I think that's going to require some work, and I'm not comfortable sending it to VDOT saying this is what we're going to do. So that's sort of a general comment I have. Like, I have a number of comments on the draft, but that's the big one. And it comes out of the underlying Department of Transportation statutes and regs say, if you take money under this federal highway stuff, then whatever you're spending the money on, you got to do this. I get that. Then they added something else that says, if you take money under this and you work on a project that in part uses this money, then it applies to everything for that project. All right, I can get my arms around that. But the shorthand they used was, and any projects ever done by the town of any sort, whether related to or unrelated to federal highway stuff. And you can see where that would go. That, I don't think they have the, I think it's overreach. I'm not even sure their own stuff says that. And I think we've got that, but I don't think we can say that. So that I have concerns about. The rest of the plan, yes, I have numerous comments. And a lot of them go to precisely that, making sure that these requirements relate to projects we do that use this federal highway money.
I have a question. I have a question, Bill. Are we sure that this is just for federal highway money, or is it for any federal funds that the town receives? We have to be Title VI compliant for any federal funds that the town receives.
Well, if you, is it clear? It's not clear, but when you look at the authorities, it says, benefits, whatever, any program receiving federal financial assistance, okay, that's the summary, but then it talks specifically about federal financial assistance from DOT, Department of Transportation.
I feel like the DOT funds were the trigger for this, but I want to, if we're doing this work, we should make sure that we're going to be compliant for any federal funds that we receive. If we're going to go through, what I don't want to have happen is we go through, we put a plan together that's limited in nature to Department of Transportation funds, but then
Yep.
there are other federal funds that we receive, and now we have to modify our Title VI plan in order to actually implement anything, or we wind up getting hung up because we wrote our plan specifically to Department of Transportation.
I mean, I kind of have a more limited view that when you look at what they've sent us with this, it is specifically about for which a recipient receives federal financial assistance from DOT, including the Federal Highway Administration. And that's the streetscape stuff. If in the future we have some other money where they say they also want us to do this, okay. But unless and until that happens, I don't want to impose stuff on us that may or may not apply. And if they
That's
did,
fair.
we could expand it. So that's my biggest concern, because if you look at this, and it was all this like, we have to be collecting data and we have to have committees and all this. If we're doing the streetscape thing, I get it. But imagine if that is, listen to this. Every employee and representative of the town of Clifton shall perform all official duties and actions in full accord with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, applicable statutes, executive orders, regulations, and policies enunciated thereunder, period. Full stop. So everything Amanda's doing, keeping minutes, she'd have to make sure it is in accord with Title VI. I don't even know what that means. Okay. I get it for federal highway funds tied to that, which, as I read it, is what it's supposed to do. But as currently written, it's open-ended, which might be nice, but I just have concerns. Steve, do you have any thoughts?
I'd like to agree totally with the mayor on this one. This document theoretically would tie the town of Clifton to doing all sorts of things that we don't have the capability of doing. I mean, if you read through the 22 pages or whatever it is, we don't have the staff to do it. We don't have the money to do it. We don't have the time to do it. It doesn't really apply to us. And to take Bill's point, we got CARES money, for instance, and it was federal money, but the state was clearly given the authority to distribute the money to smaller towns, and the federal rules did not apply. It was state rules that applied. So I have no idea where DOT, the state DOT is saying that the federal rules flow through to Clifton. I'm not sure that's true, because we're not getting the money from the federal government. We're getting the money from the state. The state has gotten the money from the federal government. And it may be true that they have committed to the feds that all of the 64 Act applies to everybody. But I can tell you, this town cannot, if we sign this document ultimately and say we are committed to doing all those things, we would be in violation because we can't do it. We don't have the staff to do it. We don't have the capability to do it. So I'm really concerned about this document.
Where does that, so I was originally thinking when I first saw the document, you know what, let's send it over to VDOT, have them look at it. We won't take action. We'll just say, have a look. Let us know if this would satisfy you. Because if they say this isn't good enough for them, then we're kind of spinning our wheels anyway. But after I read it, I'm not even comfortable doing that. Because they would think that we're willing to sign this. And for the reasons I just talked about, I couldn't sign it because of what the impacts would be. And the question then is, what do we do with it? And Steve, Yeah, my thinking was, to the extent we have a project that going forward after the date hereof takes money from DOT, that's only the streetscape. That it would be subject to this, whatever this is. Is that something we could do? If the answer to that's no, then that's another thing, but I don't know.
Well, look, taking your point, if it were, first of all, limited to DOT, I'm comfortable going ahead and saying to DOT, all right, here's a first draft. We're not saying that we even think this is a great first draft, but if we're going in the wrong direction, we need to know that before we start going any farther, because we're a very small town and we're not going to spend a whole lot of money on a whole lot of lawyers. So you've got to tell us what actually applies to us when we don't have meetings the way this document suggests we have meetings. We're not going to, I mean, if you read this thing carefully, or even not so carefully, we would have to put foreign language on all of our agenda items. Now, we're not going to do that, and there's no reason to do that, and it's not rational to do that.
I
if
think
DOT
it means,
is saying
I think we have to have a method for people to request a foreign language.
no, on notices, it says that it has to be in appropriate foreign languages. I don't know what an appropriate foreign language is in this case.
Well, I can certainly respond to that, having gone to Title VI training and having, put all of this together, especially to that one specific piece, is part of the data review process is to better understand who we are as a town and our language needs. And we certainly went through that process, and built into this is an opportunity to go through our own process to determine how much we need to extend based on the demographics of whatever area we might be engaging in. For example, if there's some sort of project in town that only deals with that only is for town residents, we have the statistics that there are 0 households that don't speak English very well, so that particular requirement would not be applicable.
Is
But for
that a
something,
decision, Lynn, that we would make?
that's a decision that we make, and it's written
And
into
it is reviewed by somebody?
right. That's the idea as the Title VI coordinator, that part of the implications of this plan is that we would need to identify a Title VI committee so that when we review this annually, that we check the census data. It's not hard with 243 people, and make that update. And having spent a lot of time in the Title VI space, there's certainly the Civil Rights Act and Title VI that prohibits discrimination based on race, color, or national origin, based on any activity that receives federal funding. And this push that the mayor is referring to is speaking about pushing to strive to not discriminate on the basis of race, color, or national origin in anything that we do. So that's where that language is really coming from. I certainly don't have a legal background, and I appreciate your perspectives on not getting stuck in any way. And at the same time, the spirit behind moving forward with these practices is helping us to look at ourselves in a way that we might be able to see something that we haven't seen before. We might be able to have a channel for people to bring forward something that they might see as discrimination. Having gone through the Title VI training, the intention of VDOT is not to take funds away from any project. The spirit behind it is to help people to get acquainted, not just a variety of different Civil Rights Act titles, but actually move forward and move the needle in terms of discrimination that's currently present, and creating more inclusive creating more inclusive, you know,
Yeah, but
places to live.
excuse me just a second. I think you identified the exact point that both Bill and I are trying to make. And that is, I don't think Bill disagrees with you, and I certainly don't disagree with you on saying we should look at whether there are improper discriminatory actions that we're taking in town. I don't think there are, but we should all look at that. We can have a committee on it, anything you want. But the next step that is being proposed here puts us in legal jeopardy if anybody wants to say we didn't do it the way it was supposed to be done. And we didn't do it the way it was supposed to be done means hundreds of pages of documents. That's what we have to avoid. And if the state, if VDOT is trying to say that we have to apply this to everything we do, and that anybody at any time can bring a legal challenge saying that we have somehow discriminated, the town couldn't afford the first suit. And this is a game that is played a lot. And I don't want to be part of that game. And I'm not willing to say, for one town council member, I'm not willing to say that we even have the capability of complying with all the things that were listed there. So I'm very concerned. I mean, I don't want to sign a document that says I'm going to do something to make VDOT feel good when I know that we can't do it. And therefore, we're opening ourselves up to liability anytime. I don't think that makes any sense. I'm more than happy to do what needs to be done to make sure that we're not taking discriminatory actions. And if you want to study that and all of that, that's fine. But to say, and now we're going to put the town on the line legally to comply with, in this case, 22 pages just to start with, of legal requirements that I don't even think we can comply with now, is a step too far.
And it's notable that laws that apply to us now, anti-discrimination, whatever, they apply to us. We can't make them not apply. They apply. That's not what this is. This is saying, if you want money from us, you have to voluntarily agree to do all this other stuff that you wouldn't otherwise actually be required to do. Look, I get it on streetscape. And I also kind of wonder, when I look at streetscape, what the discrimination angle would be, although people are welcome to come forward and talk about that the sidewalks somehow are discriminatory. The intent of this stuff is if you're having bus systems, if you're building highways and roads, where are you building them? We don't do any of that. So this is just way too heavy-handed for basically replacing the material on some sidewalks. But if we said it applied to that and only that, and somebody wanted to raise an issue about the planters that we had or something, I don't know, I could probably get there. Like, I would be very concerned that if somebody wanted to make this an issue just as a nuisance, it would be, financially devastating for us to have to deal with this stuff. But if it's just for the streetscape, okay. But if we somehow said it'd be everything,
sorry,
and that would include the box. Remember the box we talked about? Is it 3 feet tall? Is it made out of metal? Next thing you know, we're getting a complaint and lawsuits filed because people think the box is discriminating against them. Or some plants we're putting in, or painting a fence, or repainting the pink house, or, oh my gosh, it would be the end. So I can't see doing that. Steve, you had a thought?
Yeah, well, Jerry wanted to say something, and I also wanted to point out that as an example, if you have looked at when you applied to run for town council, there are all sorts of rules and economic showings that you have to show, that there are no conflicts of interest, except it doesn't apply in Clifton. It doesn't apply because they recognize that this doesn't make sense for a town of 200 and whatever we are, 38. I'm sorry, Jerry, why don't you say whatever it was you were going to say?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So in terms of, let me start with the streetscape. It is a federally funded project. It's not state funded. The funds are coming from the feds and it's passed through the state. The state administers it or is a part of that administering of the project, but it's federal funds. In terms of Title VI, obviously there's very specific language in there and so forth. And actually, Susan and I sat down with Lynn about all this, but we have followed these requirements throughout the process. There are, and most of this is awarding contracts. There's a bidding process you have to go through. So there's a number of things. All these things we've been doing. So what's being requested of us now is we don't have this in writing.
It's not
so
formalized.
It's not formalized. It's not put on paper. We don't have a plan. We don't have, here's our templates, like for a request for a proposal. So this didn't happen yesterday. This happened all the way back, started with the floodplain. Okay. And before there was federal funds prior to that, but certainly with the floodplain project, Susan wrote a request for proposals. She did all that in consultation with VDOT and some other folks who have been helping us. And, we didn't have a template, but she created it. And it was all based on the requirements that VDOT has for these federal funded projects. So we've been adhering to all of this as we've gone. And I don't, so in terms of that, we are already on board. And it's not about the sidewalks or a planter box, or it's about the process of construction. The sidewalks, the streets, the curbs, that's all regulated by something completely different. That's all rules and regulations that VDOT has. We have to go through a process with VDOT. They have to approve our design to meet their standards. So the objects, that part of it, that's a whole different thing. But it's more about the process of awarding, contracts,
Spending the money, spending the federal dollars.
Spending the money, exactly. It's not like what you're spending it for, it's the actual process of spending that money. And I don't know for certain because I haven't read through all the Title VI documents. Lynn certainly has, but I can't imagine that to have a project where you're going to spend town money on replacing a tree is going to go through the same process. I just can't ever imagine that's the case. Because we're using federal funds, we have to go through this process. I mean, for an example, for right now, we're in the right-of-way phase. We have to get on the plans, the areas where we need to either acquire land or get an easement. If Novak was doing this, and Bill, you know this, when Novak wants to come onto your property and have an easement because they're going to put power on there, they just do it. That's just them. They just do it. It's all on their own. But because this is a federal funded project, we have to go through a certain process, a legal process, to get appraisals, offer, what that land would be for that easement, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole full process, which that would be certainly a place where you could discriminate. So that's all being followed. So I think what just needs to happen is we just need to get a little more clarification on the day-to-day practices of town council. And as Steve said, I just can't imagine, if you have public notices, sure, it's like, okay, you got to offer certain things, but I can't imagine it's going to be down to your day-to-day operations for the town council.
Jerry, I agree with you, but I think what Bill was saying is the way the document is written right now, it opens up everything that the town does. It's not just, I understand that you've been complying with the contracting requirements and so on. And for this project, that would be all you had to do. I had to do the CARES money, which was federal money, but the federal rules did not apply. the state rules applied and the county rules applied, and the county changed its rules that recognized that we couldn't comply with some of the things that the city of Fairfax had to comply with. So we need those, we need that wiggle room.
You need that
Because
clarification.
otherwise, we've
Yeah.
got a document here that says that everything we do is with all of these compliances that we can't do.
Right. Yeah. I think you just need to get that clarification,
Yeah.
and yes, I completely agree with that.
Okay, so Jerry, just as a example, we talked about the basketball court resurfacing. And if the proposal was that had to go through this whole RFP process, and that you would agree that doesn't make sense.
No.
Okay. Currently, the document would require that. And obviously, I don't think any of us think that makes sense. And my take was, if VDOT says, no, that's what's required, then I think we're gonna have an issue.
Right.
Because it just doesn't make sense. And I don't even think that's how it's supposed to work. It talks about money coming from federal funds coming from the Department of Transportation to do a project. That project has to be done in accordance with this. Or if the funds are used as part of a project, that project, you can't say it's only 10%, don't worry. If you use that money in a project, this stuff goes with it. To some extent, I go, fair enough, man. You want the money? You recognize it comes with this stuff. You either take the money with these conditions or you don't take the money.
Right.
That's okay. It's a choice. But to say that it opens it up to everything else, I cannot go there.
Lynn, based on what you've learned, Lynn, do you think it's everything?
I think that they are pushing for us to apply non-discriminatory practices in everything that we do. They're not saying that you have to apply, that you have to, they're not saying how it's done. It's language that they put in the way that we are approaching the Title VI. And there's a line in the first, the Title VI statement that's written by the mayor, to be signed by the mayor. It says that the town strives to achieve non-discrimination in all of its programs and activities, whether or not the programs and activities are federally funded.
Strives to.
Yeah, and frankly, I don't even see why we would say that. It's not that it's not true, okay?
Yeah.
And you guys know it's true. And if anybody wants to raise an issue, bring it on. We're all, we're certainly excited about that. But why we would be telling VDOT and the Department of Transportation some, comments about what we strive to do or don't do, that does not strike me as right. And that was the thing I had the biggest problem with, was this weird statement of commitment that we agree we'll do all these things. And I can just think of somebody coming back later and with a club and going, you said you were gonna do this and you didn't do it. Oh my gosh. So I get the idea, and I think we all agree that if anybody raises any issues about discrimination, Steve, would be the first to jump up and go, no way, no how, won't stand for it. That's not right. Look at what we did on the accessible parking issues. So, we walk the walk on it for sure, but I don't know why we have to tell these people that or put it in writing. So. Okay.
Well, it raises what the enforcement process is.
Yeah. If the concern is around creating legal liability for the town that we can't sustain, I certainly appreciate that. The only reason I even asked the question is because it's a lot of effort to go through this, and if it's going to apply to every federal dollar we take in, whether it's DOT related or not, that should be considered if we're going to put the plan together. But I think the fact that we're a town of fewer than 250 households should be taken into consideration, as it is with other things, as Steve has pointed out. So I don't know who our contact at VDOT is, or even FDOT, whatever. I agree with the concept. My instinct is that DOT says, you take our money, comes with the baggage. You don't want the money, don't take the money. That's my guess. Jerry, you have a sense? Lynn?
And I think it's important that Title VI applies to all federal funding. It's just Department of Transportation that's holding everybody to the fire right now. So Daryl, to your point, other funders, other grants that we might go to, environmental funds to do a floodplain project. If it's direct federal funding, then it's then Title VI does apply. So we should have everything in place so that in case they are going to be cracking down and checking all these things, and just as Jerry said, so many of these things are already in place. This is just an opportunity for us to get organized, pull them all together. So if it's not Jerry and Susan the next time, that there's actually a place to for the documents to live, and with the different templates that we've been able to create. So going through this process and having the plan. And I think what's important too is that we get to write our own plan. So this is based on a template. Steve, thank you for the advice. Last time I found a template that I was able to use and have to really take a lot of pieces out that didn't apply to us. So I think we have the opportunity to make the plan our own, and VDOT will review it. So I think that this is the moment to figure out what we do want in the plan. This is my draft attempt at trying to represent the town, and I think it's appreciate all the perspectives. So if there are pieces that we want to take out that are uncomfortable at this point, this is a process we'll get to go through every year if we comply. So we can always add more information to it in the future.
One other thing, just big picture here, Len. I saw that email that there's going to be a research project to understand what what we are doing to implement our plan and put it together. And so I brought that up. I mean, it's like, okay, really? We're just trying to get our feet under ourselves, and we're trying to figure out how to put this plan together. Now you've got a research project. You got to try to figure out how we're doing this. So I brought it up in our meeting today. And so I'm going to forward that email to Terry Yates, the person we're kind of dealing with at VDOT there. And it's like, can you back off a little bit? It's like, really? Anyway, so just FYI, and I don't know if the rest of the council understands what that was, but that just seemed a little much. But it's like, come on, man.
Jerry, your example is an excellent one. That this proposal, the way it's written now, and I understand that this is just the beginnings of a template, anticipates a community that has the ability to have numerous studies and all sorts of things that we don't do, and we're never going to do.
Right.
And if we then said, well, as Lynn said a little while ago, we don't have any foreign-speaking language members of the community, predominantly foreign-speaking language members of the community, somebody would come to us and say, well, show us the study that proves that. And we don't have that study. So now do we have to go out and buy that study?
No, Steve, I think we do. It's part of what's built into the plan, is that annually we review the census, and there's information in the census that tells how many non-English households, and and it's in there. And if on a regular basis we look at that on an annual basis, from what I see, the town of Clifton, we don't have any speakers who don't speak, non-native English speakers who don't speak English well or very well. But if you go out to the zip code 20124, we find that, wow, they're 8% of the zip code that
yes, but that
doesn't speak English.
That raises the question.
That raises the question that Bill was raising before. Did Steve Bittner have to put out a bid in multiple languages before looking and talking to two people who could seal the basketball court? And the answer, it seems to me, reading that document for the first time, is yeah. He would.
It would be as written, but we can't go with that. And I noticed there's this thing about Clifton residents, cool. There's 20124, generally known as Clifton. I gotta get my head around that. And then it says 5 zip codes, like 20-mile radius from here. And we have to somehow take into account their interests and considerations and languages that apply to them.
Can't do it.
That seems crazy.
This was one of the specific pieces that was in the discrepancies, is that we needed to account for the residents or people that are passing through town.
Why?
And people who work in town that don't live in town.
Exactly.
The reason for that provision, I believe, is because they were talking about transportation provided by the town. And people passing through the town being able to use the transportation system of the town. We don't have a transportation system.
Railroad.
So
Yeah,
so we should be able to.
I think you can apply it to streetscape in that we have a big project. The streets are going to be, under construction, notifying, taking into consideration, notifying the public how we might do that. Some of that, Amanda and I worked on it. We're going to be posting that in the El Tiempo Latino newspaper to make sure that is, that when we have a public hearing about the construction, that we're considering people who are passing through the town and not just those residents that are in the town, within that project.
The issue though is we open it up to, we have to advertise in a 20-mile radius because we're saying that our sidewalks are of interest to, it's literally millions of people, okay? At least 1.3 million, probably a couple million people that we're now saying we have to take care of. And any of those 2 million people could raise a complaint about our sidewalks. I don't get it. Like I get it for a highway that goes through your jurisdiction and people are driving on it. I don't get it here. And it opens it up for us to have real liability. Go ahead.
Couldn't they make a complaint now?
Sure. Yeah, they don't have to complain to us. They can complain to VDOT. They can complain to the federal highway, something or the other. There are like 8 different places they can complain. One of the requirements of this process is to also have a complaint form that they'll complain to us, and we'll send it right on. We'll send it right on up the chain because we're not going to investigate the complaint that the Federal Highway Commission would be
Is
the
responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the people who could even work with the Federal Highway Administration, nor could we afford the lawyers who would do that. I mean, I don't know that you are really appreciative of how big an obligation we're taking on here. Yeah. And I don't appreciate it either in terms of how big it is. And I'm more than willing to hear VDOT or the federal program say that, yes, we're applying this to a town of 235 homes with no professional staff. I don't think they intend to do that. I know that the state did not intend to do that and put in specific exemptions. And I said this last month, somebody has to look at whether there are exemptions in these programs.
Yeah. I think there's room for some of that. I mean, just for example, VDOT had requested Susan or I to take a course. It's something that they changed in terms of their policies, like 3 or 4 years ago, in terms of administering this local project. And the requirement was, well, a full-time employee from the town needs to do this. And I said, we have no full-time employees in the town of Clifton, period. So I think I'm using even that in this case too, because there are no full-time employees. I mean, we have one employee, and she probably spends full-time hours.
Be an employee for long.
But she doesn't get compensated for that. But anyway, so point is, we just don't, like you said, say we don't have those resources, and there's got to be some mechanisms where some of this stuff can be backed off, and we just got to figure that out and and understand where we can back off and where we can't. But anyway, there's got to be some leeway there.
So I know that March 10th is a hard deadline for the town to submit a draft that has been approved. It doesn't have to be the final version. Because if whatever we were to approve got sent over and it was found to still be deficient, we would have at least met the deadline, and then the process would be ongoing. So could the council consider marking up this draft to limit that obligation just to the Department of Transportation, to approve something tonight and then send it in by the 10th? And then if the VDOT Civil Rights Office has a problem with that, they can send it back, and then there's a process to have more conversations with them.
So there are two parts to that. One is whether the council would be comfortable if the draft were marked up to make it limited to, in effect, streetscape, okay? In effect, to projects done in the town with federal funds taken from the Department of Transportation, okay? If it was limited to that, would we be comfortable sending it in? Number one. The second one is actually doing that. That's not going to happen by the 10th, in my view, because I know I'll be the one doing it, and I have other things that I need to do between now and Friday. So I don't think that's realistic. And to get it done and reviewed by the council, that certainly is not doable. But those are two different things. One is, would we be comfortable sending it in if it was limited to that and saying, look, here's where we're headed, what you think? And I think that can be done in a reasonably timely manner, although I'm doubtful about Friday. So thoughts on that, Steve, others?
Yeah.
You have thoughts on that?
Two things. I mean, I unfortunately am limited in my time of how much more I can be here tonight.
Yep.
For health issues, but
Understand.
yeah, Bill, I would be comfortable if we modified this to make it clear to VDOT that this is a tentative draft, that we have not approved all of this language and all the obligations that we're talking about here, but we would like their feedback. I mean, I don't know where this March 10th thing came from and how many months they gave us to deal with it. 2 months they gave us to deal with it. To hell with them. This is far more important and far more difficult for a town of this size than giving us 2 months notice to have to rewrite something that has no form to it. I would be comfortable with a modification that said this is a tentative draft, number one. Number two, that it is limited only to the Department of Transportation funding for the current program. And it's fine if they come back to us and say, no, that's no good, then we have some time to work on it.
Can we just send them back a letter stating that we're working on the plan, but in our opinion, it only affects the federal funding for streetscape? You just send them a statement
and see what they have to say.
See what comes back.
Yeah, it's another way to do it.
We have a preliminary working draft, and we're seeking to be in compliance for the streetscape. Yeah.
And we believe we are in compliance for the streetscape.
Yes.
Right.
We're seeking to formalize our compliance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think let's say we don't send them anything by March 10th. What happens next? They pull the funds. Is that a legitimate possibility?
We're at risk for that, but I can tell you that, with examples all across Virginia, they haven't pulled anybody's funds. What they want is for people to be thinking about Title VI and put these procedures into place. So I don't think it's.
So that sounds to me
don't-
like
I-
this is a one-off negotiation town by town.
Well-
You're right, but I don't think, given how much it has already been accomplished, I don't think just saying that we don't have anything here, but actually showing our good faith effort to figure this out and get it right, I think will buy us a lot.
Well, can we
I think we need
modify
to-
what Pat was saying? Can we modify what Pat was saying and say, send a letter saying we are working on this, but we're looking at specific limitation with regard to streetscape. We believe that this model that we're looking at, which we have not approved, but we would like your feedback on what it says.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I think we need to express Steve's very real concerns about the ongoing maintenance of something like this and the limited staff that we have. I think it's acceptable to show our work as long as it's explicitly clear that this is preliminary, unapproved, and subject to major changes based on, further discussions and their feedback.
I really liked what Pat said, just sending them a letter, telling them that we are working on this diligently. We have a working draft, a tentative draft that the council is in the process of reviewing and revising. And perhaps we say, including addressing the scope of the Title VI program and what it would apply to. And we will be back to you with that draft as soon as it's completed.
Can
And
we
send
give
that
ourselves
to
a due date?
I wouldn't.
And Billy, we might want to just insert what type of town we are on that. Just one more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All volunteer town, 243. And the point is, we don't want to indicate to them we're not doing anything or we're not going to do it, because we're doing a lot and we are going to do it, and we do have a plan. I would, based on what Pat's saying, what I'm hearing from everyone, I would rather we did this right and we sent something we think we could commit to this. What do you think?
Yeah,
Come back.
And
yeah,
you
rather
might-
than
and you
I
might
don't
even-
want to. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give them the impression that if we send them something that if they say yes, we'll sign it, right?
No. And you might even want to add, Bill, a sentence that goes to Jerry's point of, within the context of the streetscape plan, we believe we're within the ballpark of compliance already
We believe we are operating within Title VI.
within Title VI. Yeah.
And I don't think there's I'm not sure there's a question about that. And
I don't either.
But I think what you could state something where, we are currently, working on a project that's federally funded and are adhering to, the Title VI requirements. We just have a large concern of the applicability of Title VI to non-federal funded projects within our little town.
To every facet of what we do as a town, without a full-time staff, without
My and I'll tell you guys, and we haven't really talked about this. Steve touched on it. Reality is, I think they gave us 6 weeks or something, which is ludicrous. The amount of time they gave us is ludicrous. Unless you're Fairfax County and you have 400 people full time who work on Title VI.
tap 2 lawyers to get this done in a week or whatever.
Right, that's fine. But what they gave us was silly. So Lynn has done heroic work.
Yes.
To move this forward so we could have a meaningful discussion. Because without this draft that Lynn's done, we can't have a discussion here. And I appreciate what Steve has done in looking at this, okay, to think about what's in there and what's not and directionality. So we have done heroic work, but they didn't give us a reasonable amount of time. So we send them a letter back. By the way, sending them nothing, which is an option, in my opinion, is always a bad idea. We say, by the 10th, we go, here it is. We're not done yet. We are diligently working on it. We do have a draft and da 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 da. And if they come back and go, we're pulling your funding, well, we'll go from there. I think the likelihood of that is very low because we are working in good faith to get this done, putting a lot of effort into it. I think the one issue we tee up is we're looking at the scope of these requirements and what they would apply to. I like if we want to mention that with regard to the work we're doing, that we've been considering this, taking this into account and complying with it. And we don't say anything else other than we're endeavoring. And when we have the draft, we'll send it to you. And then this council can do this in due course. This is a weighty obligation. We need to make sure we're comfortable with it. They should understand that. And frankly, they should go, I can't believe that this little town of 243 is volunteer driven, actually has created and put together this draft and is busily working through it. Isn't that great? I think that'll be their actual reaction. And Jerry and Lynn, will be talking to them about it. But that's where I'd come out, is send them a letter. You don't have to go and here are 4 issues we think we're going to argue with you about. We don't need to go there. Other than, we have issues, our concerns about scope of applicability.
Well, just about, I think that our concerns about ensuring that we can comply with whatever policy and plan we put in place, given our limited resources.
It's an issue of feasibility, and it's not feasible the way it's currently done. You still have a quorum, Bill, but I have got to go here.
All right. This is the only thing that's left. Everybody agree? We're not.
Do we need a motion to direct somebody to draft this letter and send it?
It's not a bad idea.
I make a motion that we draft a letter and to the effect that we are seeking to comply, and we will be in touch as soon as we have a draft ready for them to review.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion?
Just a question.
We didn't talk about who's going to write it.
It's an obvious embedded question. Yes.
Just a
Lynn, go
question.
ahead.
If we're going to be sending any drafts or anything with the letter, or if it's just the letter.
Just the letter.
I think initially we just send the letter.
You don't want to send a draft, Lynn. You want to be able to hold your powder based on this council saying this is what we want to do. And when you send a draft, you want it to be one where you say the council is comfortable with this draft and is comfortable with this draft. Because whatever it might be, they'll come back and say, if you change A, B, and C, we're done here. Okay. So you want best foot forward on this. It's not your fault or our fault that the time they gave us is not appropriate. It's obviously not appropriate for.
I mean, that's just more evidence of why we have concerns. Frankly.
Bill, are you going to draft this?
That's
Lynn going to draft this. Who's going to draft this?
Yeah,
Lynn, I would prefer Lynn drafted it. I'm happy to look at it.
I'm sorry, but I've got to go.
Okay, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Steve, thanks for hanging in there.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Really valuable.
No, that's okay.
Please check out. By the way, we're done. You did it.
Yeah. Motion to adjourn.
Whew.
Oh,
you're
muted.
I'll second. Second. Okay, it's not a discussable motion, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. We still have a quorum for that, which is good. Okay, so we're hereby done, and honestly, we covered a lot in a lot of time. Jerry, sorry to make you hang out so long for your thing, but I felt it tied in with this, so.
No worries. Just giving you a hard time.
Get it.
Okay. All good.
All right, thanks everyone, and especially Lynn for all your hard work. We could not be doing what we're doing.
Just tell him the mayor wouldn't let you send the draft. That's all you got to tell him.
Oh, this is I deal with this stuff all the time where the government says you got to do X and you go, okay, I'm going to do X, but you have to give me a reasonable time.
Yeah.
And their question is, are you actually working on it? Are you going to do this? And they see people, believe me, there will be many people who are doing nothing. They see people where they go, wow, you guys are really engaged, blah, blah, blah. That's great.
Well, let's look at enforcement actions in the town. we've had situations where the residents just don't respond to any of our letters or our outreach or anything. And then there are other folks that engage with us and work towards a solution.
Right.
So if we engage with them and work towards a solution, I think that's good faith.
It's good. It's good. We are working in good faith.
Yes.
So
That's what
There it
we
is.
just got to show them that.
stand tall, stand proud.
Yeah.
right.
Lynn's taken on a difficult task, and kudos to her.
Yes. Yes.
I know it's remarkable and heroic effort. All right. Thank you.